Yo, what is good, dev guys? Welcome back. In this video, I want to move forward with plugging in those animations to our animation blueprint. So let's go ahead and jump right in here. And let's go to content. I believe it's in assets, retarget, base, anim layer BP. And let's go to our rifle. Open up this rifle anim layer. And let's start plugging in these different animations. So I'm going to hit control space. And you see I'm already set up because I was messing around. But if you go to content, or no, we go to assets, animations, and go into the Lyra rifle, you'll see we'll have this list of animations here. Now, I kept these animations here, but if they don't have the FPM tag, please don't use them. The only reason I didn't delete them is because they were causing issues with migrating the assets over. So I just went ahead and kept them. You can delete them now because, you know, in this project, it probably won't affect anything. But in the other project, deleting them was affecting stuff in that project. So let's go ahead and jump right in here. So for walk, right off the bat, we want to do our rifle walk. So make sure you're using the A_FPM. The ones that you shouldn't use do not have the FPM. So just to make sure that your stuff is working like mine. And you can see all the arms are pink or purple-ish pink. So rifle walk, we want to just plug this in for all 4 different cardinal directions. And if you don't know how to get this dynamic content browser, it's just control space and it'll pop up in your current editor window. So crouch walk, we want to grab crouch walk over here, plug this in for all 4 cardinal directions. Let's go ahead for idle. We want to get a rifle idle, and for ADS and hip fire, we want it all to be the same. We don't have any idle breaks, but if you want to have like some twitches or just subtle movements in between your idle animation, you put those right here. For crouch idle, I want to go ahead and get crouch here. So let's go ahead and put it in idle, entry, and exit. We don't have any left hand overrides, but this is basically if you had, like, say one of your guns had a left hand different like grip, or like a foregrip or angle grip, and you wanted different poses for the left hand, you would basically just plug in that animation right here. Okay, for jog, we want to get our run loop. So let's plug this in for all 4 cardinal directions. Then we have these things called pivots. Now, pivots, when I say they're going to be, we're going to run into the most bugs with this pivot here. And that's because if we go to let's just go over here to content, characters, heroes, mannequin, and go into animations here. And let's just look at locomotion, rifle. And let's open one of these up so that we can look at one of their pivot animations. Let's go down to pivots. I'm gonna just get the forward one. And if I open up this pivot animation, you see it has a lot of different data inside of here. These anim notifiers for foot plant sounds, some effects for the walks. It also has these notifiers here for when the left and right feet plant to the ground. But more importantly, it has this transitions to locomotion animation notify layer state. And this right here, we don't have in our actual animation, like the pivot animation that we're going to plug in. We don't have this inside of our animation. So when we pivot, our character will freeze and it'll look wrong, but it's not wrong. It's just the fact that I didn't make an animation to handle this. I mean, you could duplicate the animation that we're going to use and just add one of these to it, but that's up to you. I'm not too concerned like with what it looks like. I just want it to work and know that it works. And when it freezes, that lets me know that it works. You know what I mean? It lets me know that it's using that animation and something's wrong. So we're in the development stage. You got to think, not try to think of everything as, oh, I want to release this or I want to show this off. No, we're trying to get things to function. And then hopefully you have a team, or you have if it's just you, you can put on your animation hat. You can start making animations for that particular pivot. So for me, you know, since I kind of made these animations all on my own with a control rig, I didn't want to get too deep because making animations is time consuming. And I was just trying to test to see that things work. But for our purposes, we're just going to plug in the same run loop animation here and go on about our day. So ADS pivot, we want to do idle. Anything pertaining to ADS, we want to make sure that it's in idle, since our system is going to be procedurally moving our bones for the ADS. We don't want any animations kind of getting in the way of that. So we'll just keep the nice, simple idle animation there. If you want to, you could make a walk animation for your ADS and all that type of stuff. That way you have some movement while you're in that procedural state. And I will be doing that in my project in the future. But right now, just having this and just having it working is fine. So crouch pivot, we'll just do crouch idle. Actually, we'll do crouch walk. So I'm gonna grab crouch walk and just plug it into all 4 cardinal directions. So now I'm going to the starts. We have this run start here. And in Lyra, they don't really have like a walk start or they don't really call it like sprint. And we'll see what this actually does for us when we press play inside the editor. So let's just continue moving on. So ADS start, of course, when I say ADS, we do idle. Crouch start, I have a crouch walk start right here. And for stops, what I basically do is just snap everything back to idle. But in your project, like when you want to release, basically what you want to do here is a transition animation to go from, you know, sprint to transition smoothly from sprint to idle. You don't want to just snap to idle like we're doing here. And plug these in. And for jump, same thing. We want to be idle. Fall land, jump start loop, jump fall loop, all idle. All good to go, all idle. These we don't really need since we won't be using these offsets for aiming. This will be done procedurally. For our turn in place, we basically just want to be, yeah, I'd say we be idle because turn in place is when you're turning but not moving. So we don't want any weird animation to play here. So that is pretty much it for the, you know, for the setup of that. So in order to test this, we need to go into our, let's go into our all folder, go into plugins, shoot a core, jump inside your game folder, wherever that is, and open up your hero shooter mannequin, a base. And instead of giving us that pistol that they give us by default, let's give ourselves the rifle. So this will make us equipped with the rifle. If we hit compile and save here, now for you want to do one more thing because I've already changed this since I've done this previously. But you want to go into your weapons folder. So let's jump out of games and let's go into weapons. Go into your rifle folder, go into your rifle blueprint, and this skeletal mesh will have a rifle in it. You want to clear it out. So it'll naturally have a rifle in here. Let's just put something in here. You want to just clear it out. That way you're not spawning with a third-person rifle that is kind of like attached and making it look like none of the code worked. So if I press play here, you'll see that is our third-person rifle there in the shadow. And for some reason, our first-person arms are showing in the shadow as well. So we need to fix that. But the biggest issue is that our arms aren't snapping to first person. But if we F8 and exit out of that, you can see our weapon is attaching to the right bone. That's doing, that code is correct. But for some reason, we're not getting our animation. Now, I figured this out because I was testing. I realized that my project was not similar to my other project, but I went through all these different steps of testing, and I found out that inside of our plugins, no, actually it's in content, I'm sorry. Let me close all these folders real quick. Content, characters, heroes, and we go into mannequin and jump into our animations. And I'm doing this completely wrong because this is all first person. This is third person. So come over here to your first person side. So that's in content, assets, retarget, and let's go to base anim layer BP. And we actually want to go to the base mannequin layer. So not the layer, but the actual base animation blueprint. And since we're not using any of this, we actually don't need to calculate it, and it's actually making our calculation mess up. So what we need to do is completely bypass all of this, and we want to take the skeletal controls, because this skeletal controls is where we're actually going to be manipulating our procedural IKs, and then we just want to output our locomotion. So our locomotion is cached here. This takes in our cycle states, our start states, our jumps, and all our pivots. It overrides the left-hand pose if we want to, and then it caches it as a locomotion pose. We want to actually use that pose, and the way you do that is just type it in locomotion. It'll give you an option to use cache pose locomotion, and you want to pass this into the full body skeletal controls, and then pass this out to the out pose. And when we compile and save that and hit play, you'll see now we're in our first person like animation state here. But as you can see here, if we move forward, instead of using our walk animation, it's using our sprint animation, which if we're, moving sideways when we're not sprinting, it looks kind of wonky. And then we can also see if we move here and we pivot, that actually didn't give me an issue here. It's actually not giving me the issue that I'm trying to demonstrate here, but I can show you here. If we go from here to here, we'll freeze. And that's because our pivot animation doesn't have that transition to locomotion. So if we go from here and we pivot to our left side, which is basically completely changing your direction or your cardinal direction, it'll freeze. And this is because of what I was saying earlier, we don't have that transition. We'll try to see if we can fix that with just duplicating the animation and putting that transition in there and seeing if it'll fix it. But for now, I want to fix that, the state where we are walking technically and we're not sprinting, and it's actually forcing us to use the sprint animation. So if we go to our mannequin base layer here, our base first person animation blueprint, and we go down to this update cycle. Where is it? Updates. Oh, wrong. This is the wrong one here. So we want to close this down. We actually want to go to our first person anim layer, and we want to open up the base anim layer for our first person items. So if we open this up, you can see I'm already in the function that we need, but it's inside of this state update as an anim node function. So inside of anim node functions, you have this function called update cycle animation. And basically this is where we kind of tell our layer, hey, depending on what state we're in, whether we're sprinting or we're crouching, we want you to play these different animations. So right off the bat, we don't have a way to determine whether we are sprinting or not. So what we need to do is actually go to our get main anim BP thread safe, and let's make sure that this is getting the right animation blueprint, which is not. It's getting the third person blueprint. And we want to take this and we want to delete this. And in this return function, we actually want this to return our first person animation base blueprint. So let's just look for _FP. And this will give us our ABP mannequin base _FP. And we pass that in as the return value. Same thing for this one. We want the first person version, so _FP. And let us give this as the object reference. And now this should be returning our first person base. And what we want to do is get anim instance and cast this to our anim, or what is it, ABP. And we want to get the mannequin base FP. So take that, and on cast success and cast fail, we want to pass this in and return a null pointer if it fails. So now we're going to get a bunch of errors with our property access here. And this is basically saying that, hey, this is not the right, we kind of got this variable, but it's not the correct variable. So what we want to do is type in property access. And what we want to do is get our, just do the same function, but this will refresh it. And because refreshing this won't actually do anything, because I don't know why, but this node actually like caches the value that this gets. So delete that. And now that'll fix this function. And we could keep on moving forward. This property access is broken. So, and I can just test this, right? So we can test this and say refresh, compile this. And this actually does work, but now since this is using the animating base as a reference, we actually need to pull off here and say get last pivot time. And actually we want to set last pivot time. So set last pivot time and just take this and replace it. And you see that value is 0.2, so we'll keep that the same, 0.2. And that'll fix that issue there. But now we have some return type values that are messing up. And let's clear this, refresh this, compile this, make sure that this is fine. And then we want to get the world location of this node, split that, and just replace these values here. Then we can get rid of this puppy. Compile that. Let's see if they got rid of that error. It did. And now we have this result was visible but ignored. And we're pretty much getting closer to the state that we need to. Now, one thing that we didn't set up was the state of sprinting. And we didn't set this up in our base anim blueprint as well. So for now, since we're just worried about the first person side of things, I'll set it up just in the first person side. So open up this mannequin base underscore FP, and there are some functions in here to update our state. So where is it? Update local state machine. That's not it. Helper functions. It's this blueprint thread safe functions right here. So we have this update character state data, right? And in here, this is where we get whether we're on the ground, we get whether we're in a crouch, ADS, or fired state, in air state, which I don't know why they have this and on the ground. But here we actually want to create a new variable called is sprinting. So let's go to our variables and let's just duplicate this puppy here. So duplicate, let's say is sprinting. And pretty much we want to set this to a value dependent on velocity. So we could go in and determine this based on our tags, but since velocity is replicated, we can just use that. So we can grab this and alt drag it in. So I'll drag this in. And what we want to do is get our velocity. And here it's getting the world velocity. I don't think that's what I want. So we need to get a property access. So let's get our property access, or just type in property access. And we want to get our movement component, and we want to grab off of there our, where are you? We want to grab our velocity. Here we go. So we just want to get our velocity, and let's get the length of this, GTH. And we want to make sure that we are reaching a certain value. So right now, I think the way our sprint is working is that we're multiplying our speed times a multiplier. So if our velocity is greater than our default speed, so I think we can also get the property access for that to get our default speed. So let's see if we can remove this binding, get movement component, and maybe we can grab our get our max speed. No, max speed will return our sprinting speed. So what we can do is just hard code this right now, because I know that my default movement speed is 600. So if this value is greater than 600, which it can only be greater if we're sprinting, and then also if we are moving on the ground, which is this puppy here. So I'm gonna use the property access. I'm actually just take this property access and duplicate it. So copy and paste. And we want to do an and Boolean because we can only be sprinting on the ground, right? So and this will set the sprinting value. So that will give us a value that we can pull from inside of our anim layer, and actually the base anim layer. So did I already have that open? Yeah, right here. So back into the update cycle anim. Here we're doing jog, walk, and crouch, but we're only walking if we're ADSing. We want to walk if we're ADSing or actually not sprinting. So we can say get main anim BP thread save, and actually what we want to do is grab is sprinting. So if we're sprinting, we want to select this based off of this and take this jog here and actually say, if this is true, we want to do the jog animation. If it's false, we want to do the walk animation. And we'll organize this in a second. Actually, let me just do it right now. We'll move that here, and then we'll remove this. So if we're ADSing, we actually only want to idle. So if we're ADSing, we want to do our idle animation, which I think we can actually grab our cardinals. So we got anim set idle, and we don't have any cardinals. So let's just grab the idle ADS. And if we're ADSing, let's just use this. If not, we want to determine our movement based off of whether we're sprinting or not. And this, we'll go ahead and set it up to where if we save this, and if everything works properly, when we walk, we'll walk. So here, for some reason, it's glitching out. Yeah, that's glitching out. Really weird, but let's look and see. I'm gonna go here, and I'm gonna make this graph for just temp code. And basically what I do here is inside of here, I do a tick function. Tick. And in here, I just do some print string. So I'll do print string. And I want to grab my movement component. So get custom movement component. Oops, I don't have that. So get movement component. Get movement component. Right here. Oops. And I want to get my velocity. I want to see what's happening here. Get velocity. Let's get the length of this. And let's just print this value out every tick, right? Let's see what our velocity is running into here. Right now I don't have the player ticking, so I need to just set that up real quick. So allow or start with tick enabled, and that should let me tick there. Now we're ticking. So my velocity is 599. But when I turn like this, it's weirding out. So let me see. If I just walk straight, does it glitch out? It doesn't. But if I do anything like this, it like glitches out. And I think it's because I'm slightly going over 600. So let's do a little bit more padding here to give ourselves, so instead of 600, let's say, I know my sprint speed is like 600 times 1.3 or something. So 780. So let's just say if our speed is greater than 700, and we're on the ground, we're sprinting. And let's see if that stops that weird ass issue. Okay. So here we got an issue here. And you see this is happening, right? This little, we're leaning. We actually don't want that much lean. We want that to be procedural. And that is coming from inside of our layer here where we are, let me make sure, yeah, where we're inside. Let me go to my anim graph. So inside of this locomotion state machine, like in our cycle, what we're doing is we're applying these additive leans. We actually don't want to do that. So this happens in pretty much all of the states. So I think you want to go in all the states and remove that additive movement, because all of our additive movement will come from a procedural IK. And you can actually, you know what I'm saying? Like you can leave these in here as an example to add additive lean, and then you can create your own additive lean animations. That way it's animation based, but that does require you to make that lean animation for each and every weapon. And that's why doing this with a procedural IK saves you a lot of animation time. So we compile and save that. We press play here. Now we're moving, you know what I mean? Somehow we're sprinting here when we move left and right. So something's happening there when we pivot. Yeah. Our pivot is doing a sprint here. So that, you know what that means? All that means is that our pivot is not calculating the walk how our actual cycle is. And since our pivot is not a cycle animation, we need to go into this anim layer base first person class and go into that function that controls the pivot. So let's do anim node functions and update stop. And we got this update start here. And actually we want to do setup start. And we want to do that same logic. So let's open up, and what I'm gonna do is just close other tabs and then open up this setup cycle. Where is it? Or was it update cycle? It's update cycle. Okay. So yeah, we basically want this same logic for our pivot, but we don't want the animations, but we want this logic here, this sprinting and this as well. So just copy this, go into this setup start, and let's just paste this right here and let's organize this how it should be. So if we're sprinting, we want to do this jog here. If this is true, we want to jog. If not, we want to do this ADS here. And basically, is this my start? So since I don't have a walk start, what I'll do is just use my walk cardinal. And let's pull out walk. So let's grab this, split it, and duplicate this, and give it this as well. And let's just plug these in right here, forward, backward, left and right. And yeah, if we're not sprinting, we'll just do our walk. Now, what you could do, and what I am doing in my own project, is I actually created another cardinal struct. I just duplicated this struct and made it my walk start. And I have walk start animations that I have planned out. I haven't actually made them yet, but I'm giving myself the option to do actual walk start animations, so that if you want to do like some kind of cool twitch before you start walking, you have that option. We won't be doing that here. I feel like that'll be a little bit, unnecessary since we don't even have the animations, but just giving you the idea to run with. So yeah, if we are sprinting, we want to use the jog start cardinals. And if we are not sprinting, we want to use the walk. So that'll keep us in the walk state. And if we're ADSing, we want to do that. And then from here, we can actually replace. And since this is using this, I'm gonna actually plug this in here into true. We won't actually need this idle ADS. we'll take that and then we'll replace wherever this is going with this, and we'll delete this right here. And that will set us up right for our starts. Now let's go to pivot, because I think pivot is a separate thing as well. So set up start, set up stop, set up pivot. And let's take that same logic here for the is sprinting, and let's just copy that. We only need that really. And let's go to the setup pivot. And it looks like here we're not actually using any directional nodes. So maybe there's an update pivot. Yeah, this is not using any directional nodes. So I guess the only next one we need to fix is setup stop, so that it uses the correct stops for the correct state that we're in. So if we're sprinting, we want to use this here, the sprint, or the jog they call it. If not, we want to use the walk. So let me go back to update or setup start, and let's just copy this right here. And this copy, go back to setup stop, and we want to use the walk. If it's false, put that up there. And then if we're ADSing, we'll do ADS, but if not, we'll decide on whether or not we're sprinting. And now if we compile and save that, we are getting closer, guys. Now if we walk, we're using a walk. If we somehow we're still in between there, we're still doing a, so maybe we set up our pivot animation wrong. So I'm gonna go to the rifle anim layer and let's go to pivot. So jog, pivots. Yeah, let's look pivot, crouch pivot, ADS pivot, and jog pivot. So I do need to do something about this. So let's just look a little bit deeper. This video is getting a little long, so we'll just finish this out and then I'll jump to the next steps in the next video. So update pivot is not actually using the state that we're in. So it's getting my velocity. It's grabbing that. Cardinal direction, it's getting a sequence evaluator. It's blending there. Distance match the target. So is there a, this is the update pivot. Look at setup pivot. So I guess the safest thing to do, and that's the only thing having to do with pivot in there. So let me look in pivots real quick. Yeah, we only got the ADS pivot or the jog cardinal pivot. So let me see if we can find references of this. Get desired pivot sequence. Here we go. This is where we need to be. Where is this at? Get desired pivot sequence. Okay, yeah, this is where we need to be. So same logic. We want to paste it here. If we're sprinting, and I'll go ahead and just duplicate this right here, up here, and get, I'm sorry if you guys can't see this. Maybe I need to make more space and zoom in a little bit. So we want to get our anim thread safe BP, check if we're sprinting. If we are, or if we're not, we want to use walk. If we are, we want to use our jog, which is this puppy here. And it's getting a direction from here, so I'm gonna pass this in as well. So let's copy this or duplicate this and put it up here. And then instead of this, we'll plug in this puppy. And now we should be cleanly moving correctly all around. So, but we still will have that freezing problem here. So we're in idle. We start walking. We sprint. When we actually sprint, we'll start sprinting. And when we go back, we'll go back to idle, or we'll go back to walk. And in our pivoting, we're walking, and sprinting causes us to sprint. Crouch, we go into the crouch state. And you can see we're crouch walking there. If we actually don't have slide in this, but if we slid, we would, oh, you can see you can still crouch and sprint. Boy, what the hell? They didn't set this up right at all. It's because crouch is not an ability. It's just a state. But yeah, everything is working how it's supposed to. I'm trying to still wall jump like I do in my project. I don't know why that happens. You can see that there are some issues with the freezing. And that is because of the transition that I was telling you guys about. But yeah, if we jump, we land into a sprint, and it's all looking pretty good. So with that being said, we're done with this video. In the next video, we're going to actually start, getting into that programmatic side of things and start setting up the base foundations of the code for our procedural IK. So if you guys are ready for that, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.